Right, so after a damp end to day one in Hobart, it's time for Ask George.
It wasn't. I'm going to stop you right there. I'm standing outside in the rain, supposed rain. It's not pathetic. It's a scandal. By the way.
Okay, so in the dry conditions in Hobart. So the first question's coming in from Will Cooling. He asks, which genius thought a four-man bowling attack with a half-fit Ollie Robinson and Mark Wood, who can't be over-bowled, was a good idea?
Yeah, I think one of the things it reminds us is how important a top-class all-rounder is. And they missed Ben Stokes. But yeah, there are all sorts of worries there, not least Ollie Robinson's long-term fitness issues, which has been a bit of an underlying thing on this tour. You get the impression the team management are getting increasingly frustrated. And yeah, they looked a bowler light. But what do you do? I mean, it's either that, we also know that their batting is painfully thin. It just doesn't really work.
Do you think they could have played someone else instead of Stokes?
Instead of Stokes? Well, they could have played Craig Overton instead of Stokes. And I'm Craig Overton's biggest fan, but I don't think his mum and dad would say he's Ben Stokes. I mean, Ben Stokes is still one of England's best batters, isn't he? So he's playing as a specialist batter. I would have done that too. So, no, it's pretty much the team I'd have picked, to be honest.
Keshav asks, what's your take on Sam Billings as a red ball player? And do you see any future in him as a full-time keeper for England in Test matches?
He's got an amazing opportunity, hasn't he? If he gets 100 here, he keeps well, and he has done so far, then he's going to make himself impossible to drop, and he's going to ruin Ben Stokes' life even more. But it's very England to pick a specialist keeper who doesn't keep in first-class cricket. So, I mean, he takes the ball really nicely. You can see the lights going out here. He takes the ball really nicely, but, I think it was only one game since February 2019 that he's been the designated keeper in first-class cricket. So I can't really give you an informed answer. But I had, funnily enough, been watching The Big Bash because I'm a fearsome geek, and watching his performance in it and thinking several times, he takes the ball really, really nicely. I mean, he looks better and he looks more cheerful and more upbeat than Joss Butler already.
And going back to your favourite topic of the weather, Adam asks, who is at fault for going off in light drizzle and then making no attempt to go back onto the field of play?
You could not exaggerate. I mean, it was barely light drizzle. It really was. It was the sort of weather you stand outside of it. Can you feel something? Oh yeah, I think so. I think I can feel it was that bad. It was pathetic. So who's responsible? Well, the ICC ultimately, because they don't do anything about it. They sit there smugly in Dubai and they're not paying tax in Dubai. And, what do you expect? So the problem is the umpires, obviously, but the umpires, like so many administrators, haven't paid to get into a cricket ground for years. They have absolutely no idea what it's like to pay a fortune for tickets and then get treated like that. It's a proper slap in the face. It was as bad as I've ever seen today. And, we sometimes wonder where the crowds are in Test cricket and all these sorts of things, and then things like today happen. It's pathetic. It should be an absolute scandal. Honestly, I think those umpires should be done for bringing the game into disrepute. I think they should be ashamed of themselves. I think it's utterly pathetic. The only umbrella, I swear to God this is true, the only umbrella up in the ground was the TV umpire or the third or fourth umpire. One of the umpires came out and very ostentatiously. There were kids playing on the grass bank over there. There were people eating picnics on rugs. It's pathetic.
Lord Lupin asks, is Tom Harrison for real or just woefully deluded?
Well, both. I mean, I'm glad that people picked up on this. I'll write about it more tomorrow, I think. But I couldn't believe how deluded he was. I mean, he was talking about, all the opportunities there were in the game today. He was talking about the opportunity to get the domestic schedule right, the opportunity to get the international schedule right. We've had that opportunity for 7 years, mate. 7 years. Completely his fault.
Grockles asks, what is the background to Craig Overton's part in this Ashes? He's had no press presence and seems to not have been considered for a role.
Well, he came pretty close to playing today, I think. I think they were a wee bit worried about Ollie Robinson in training yesterday. There was just, he missed the previous test with a minor shoulder niggle, as did Chris Wokes. And I think he was told to be ready. And he did warm up as if, he was there or thereabouts. And then they decided to go with Robinson. So, look, he hasn't played a game on the tour. And he's probably been a bit unlucky. Look, as I say, I'm a fan of Craig Overton, but let's just be frank about what he's a He would definitely not let England down. He is a doughty cricketer with bat, ball and in the field. But is he better than Mark Wood or Robinson or Chris Woakes even? You might struggle to argue that, but he certainly wouldn't let England down, and he's probably been a bit unlucky not to play today. And I think he's had one dodgy test for England, hasn't he? He was excellent in the last Ashes here. Obviously, they lost the games he played, but he was really brave and strong. And he obviously is somewhat limited as a cricketer, but he certainly wouldn't have let them down. He plays through the pain. He's fit. He'll be tough with the bat. He's actually a really good fielder. Yeah, in retrospect, he probably should have played today. But, you can... Ollie Robinson's first spell was immaculate. Absolutely fantastic. He's just not fit enough.
Stuart Akister asks, with all these injuries, is it the perfect time to give Matt Parkinson or Saqib Mahmood a go in the Test side in the West Indies? And I support this question because I'm a Lancastrian.
Yeah, it's a completely reasonable decision. Yeah, that would be a very reasonable selection. I think Fisher will probably go from Yorkshire, so I presume that Saqib will go as well. Just be a bit reasonable with what you expect from Saqib. I think he's got one first-class fifer. He is a guy who's still learning his trade. He is fast-medium, not fast. I don't say this as a criticism. I'm just saying be reasonable with what you expect from him. And he's a promising young cricketer, but he has played a lot of white ball cricket and not that much red ball. In terms of Parkinson, he improves every time I see him. He is very much a specialist bowler, and it's quite difficult to be, if you're going to play one spinner, for that spinner to be a leggy. Again, it's asking an awful lot, but maybe that's me being terribly conservative and boring in my selection. Personally, I think Callum is the better spinner of the Parkinson boys. But, those two selections are completely reasonable. Yeah, that would be absolutely fine if England picked them. I think Saqib, is probably ahead.
Jonathan Evans asks, if Lawrence isn't good enough to get a game with all the batters England have dropped or had injuries to this series, why is he in the squad?
It's a really good question. The impression I get is that they're not wonderfully impressed with how well he's trained on the tour. But at the same time, it's very difficult if you're a batter who doesn't think you're going to get any chance to play. Why wouldn't you try and enjoy yourself and maybe have the extra beer or the extra pizza or whatever? I don't know. He hasn't really had any opportunity at all. I suppose the other disadvantage he has is that he's going for a middle order slot, and that's not the area they're weakest, compared to the top order. I hear that not so long ago he was, told to maybe consider trying to get in as the second spinner, which worries me. Bearing in mind, I think he's taken 15 first-class wickets. So yeah, he probably has been a bit unlucky. But if he wants to go the extra step, he probably is going to have to work on sort of fitness, attitude, training thing, because whether it's fair or not, he hasn't made a wonderful impression on one or two senior players and the management. And I hope that he's been told that, because there's sure as hell no point telling anyone in the media and not telling the player.
Joshua Owen asks, it feels like England's bowlers haven't had much criticism compared to the batters this series. Should we acknowledge their failure to take 20 wickets?
Yeah, yes, but you would have to acknowledge that England's fielders have been woeful. So, Brisbane, for example, there were quite a few catches that should have been caught that weren't. There's another catch gone down today. Some criticism of the bowlers is absolutely fair. Keep your feet behind the line, for God's sake. And the other thing is that you can only ask people to give of their best. And, if someone like Jimmy Anderson at times has been, immaculate, at times in his career, not so much on this tour, just hasn't been maybe quick enough to get stuff out of the pitch that, say, Josh Hazlewood would. So you can't really criticise someone for being who they are. But yeah, the point is fair. England's bowlers were disappointing today, after the first spells anyway. And it's Test cricket, of course. They have to take responsibility for that. But you've got to keep in mind the context there, haven't you? The fielding's been poor, and sometimes it's been quite difficult. But yeah, this idea that England are dangerous with the pink ball, there's not a lot of evidence for that, is there? I think just on that stat, I think, is this England's 5th pink ball test away from home? And I don't think the Seamers have ever bowled a side out. The spinners did in India when Root took 5 for 8. But I think every other time the opposition declared in the first innings. Well, that's pretty damning stat. But, if England catch, Smith, Labuschagne and Warner have all gone for a duck today.
And the final one is from Richard Sturman. He asks, why do England always seem to get away with a terrible over rate? Supporters pay good money and get denied a full day's play.
Well, that's a really interesting question. So, firstly, I'm not sure they're getting away with it because I think in the Brisbane test, they got fined their whole match fee and they got penalised World Test Championship points, which is one of the reasons that they're bottom of the table. So I'm not sure they're getting away with it, but I take the point. And it's a really interesting question because some people raise this, and if I raise this on Twitter, for example, someone would say, no one cares about overage, shut up. I've had that message this evening, you can have a look. And I think you should care. I think it's just a general fairness thing and reflects the general contempt that the authorities have for spectators. So if you finish 10 overs short on the day, I think it would be terribly easy for you to immediately have a refund of 10% of your ticket. In fact, anything else is simply immoral. You would do it for anything else. You would do it, if someone had 10% of your pint, you would be annoyed. Well, why not? I mean, you're not necessarily penalising the players there. I'm just saying, from a spectator point of view, they're not actually getting what they pay for. And that could be done really quite easily, couldn't it? If people pay by credit card, it's an automatic algorithm, so if they're behind the rate by 6 overs or whatever it is, they get that amount back. Why not do that immediately? So I agree with the questioner that it is a bit of a scandal, that it has to be better. And I think part of the reason that England in particular are so poor is that they're in chaos nearly all the time and they don't know what they're doing. I really do. That isn't meant to be glib. I think they're nearly always stumbling from crisis to disaster and trying to think up a new plan on the hoof.